I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln-Lancaster County Planning Commission of February 1st, 2017. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available at the front of the chambers with the clerk. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you parked in the parking garage across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are necessary. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, the commissioners and the staff's cellular phone usage is not permitted in these chambers during any portion of this meeting, and we will appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action is final on the following items: 1.2C preliminary plat number 16005 and 1.4 special permit number 16060. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held January 18th, 2017. Is there a motion?
So moved. Beckius.
Second, Edgerton.
Okay, thank you.
Call the roll.
Okay, Beckius?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Scheer?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Jerry to read all of the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Jerry, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Yes, item 1.1 is comprehensive plan conformance number 16010 to review as to conformance with the 2040 Lincoln-Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, a request to declare approximately 4,525 square feet of property at Standing Bear Park as surplus on property generally located to the west of South 8th Street and Harrison Avenue and adjacent to 710 Hill Street. Next item is item 1.2A, annexation number 16009 to annex approximately 30.33 acres, more or less, on property generally located at North 70th Street and Arbor Road. Item 1.2B is change of zone number 16031 from AG Agricultural District to I2 Industrial Park District on property generally located at North 70th Street and Arbor Road. Note that the applicant has submitted an amendment to the change of zone to remove lot 27 in the southeast corner, and both the application and the staff report have been amended to reflect this modification. Item 1.2C is preliminary plat number 16005, Rogie Square on approximately 156.72 acres, more or less, with waiver request to pedestrian ways, block length, adjacent street improvements, storm water detention, street grade on property and street grade on property generally located at North 70th Street and Arbor Road. This is final action on this preliminary plat unless an appeal is filed within 14 days. Next item is item 1.3, change of zone number 17001 from H1 Interstate Commercial District to H3 Highway Commercial District on property generally located at 3100 Northwest 12th Street. And the final consent agenda item is item 1.4, special permit number 16060 to allow for the remodeling of an existing garage and the addition of a second floor above the garage on property generally located at 2340 Woodsdale Boulevard. Again, this is final action on this special permit unless appealed within 14 days. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these consent agenda items?
I see none.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on any of the consent agenda items? If so, please stand and state that item.
Okay, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved. Finnegan.
Second, Washington.
Call the roll.
Okay. Beckius,
Yes.
Edgerton,
Yes.
Finnegan,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Shear.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
I will now ask Jerry to call any requests for deferral received from the applicant prior to this meeting.
Okay, we have received a request for a 2-week deferral on item 2.1, text amendment number 16020, amending various sections of Title 27 of the Lincoln Municipal Code zoning ordinance relating to setbacks and parking requirements for motor vehicle sales more specifically identified on today's agenda, and repealing said reference sections of the Lincoln Municipal Code as hitherto existing.
I entertain a motion on the request for deferral.
Staff, I should mention that staff recommendation is for approval.
So moved, Edgerton.
Second, Beckius.
Please call the roll.
Beckius,
Yes.
Edgerton,
Yes.
Finnegan,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Shear.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
If there is anyone in the audience wishing to testify in text amendment 16020 rather than waiting until the February 15th meeting, now would be the time to do that. Okay, seeing none, we will now proceed to the public hearings. The staff will make a brief presentation, and then the applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, and then followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The timer will go off after 4 minutes. Then you will have 1 minute to wrap up your testimony. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Jerry, please call the first public hearing item.
Okay, item 4.1 is miscellaneous number 16006 to review the proposed determination that the North Cotner Boulevard and Peace Street redevelopment area as set forth in the North Cotner Boulevard and Peace Street redevelopment area blight and substandard determination study be declared blighted and substandard as defined in the Nebraska Community Development Law, which is described as an area bounded by Peace Street, Cotner Boulevard, North 56th Street, and R Street, along with adjacent street rights-of-way in South 56th Street, P and R Streets, and North Cotner Boulevard, covering approximately 11.6 acres more or less. Staff recommendation is a finding of substandard and blighted conditions. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
I see none. David.
Members of the Planning Commission, David Landis, Urban Development Department Director, 4810 South 44th, the applicant in this case. We bring to you the study completed by the Hannah Keelan planning firm to support a finding of blighted and substandard conditions in the area described here and as described by your staff. The review by the planning firm identified blighted and substandard conditions on these 11.6 acres. They found 4 of the substandard elements that appear in state law, and all 4 of those appear in this case. This includes dilapidated and deteriorated or aged and obsolete structures, conditions resulting in inadequate provision for sanitation, and conditions that endanger life or property by fire or other causes because structures are comprised of combustible materials and aging utilities. It's also the case that the blighted list of conditions, which are about 11 as I recall in state law, and 6 of them are present in this case. Faulty lot layout, deterioration of site improvements, a diversity of ownership, improper subdivision or obsolete planning, and environmental and blighting factors. Some of the things to take into account here are, in fact, the age of some of the elements. The water and sewer mains are at least 48 years of age, and some of them are 60 years of age. The structures are older, 71% are 40 years of age or older. It doesn't mean that an old building isn't usable, but it would have been built to standards that were used 40 years ago. Those are not the standards. Today, they're substandard almost on their face in that case. The conditions that are there include just elements that I can show you that were photographed. There are also photographs in the study, a copy of which were given to you. This is electrical wiring and roof conditions. This is some back of house operations. And there are more photographs in the study that was done. This study was done not at the city's behest, but as we normally do, which is funded by a developer who's interested in doing some work in the area. And we are aware of the desire of a developer to do work in this area. This is the first step of being able to assist them in their plans. And I can jump ahead in the process by telling you that the developer was most concerned about one of the buildings that they had significant plans for, and then discovered problems in the compaction of soil that supported the building, in which case their desire to replace the building that's there, an older and substandard building with a 4-story structure, wouldn't be supported by the soil. So all of their planning, their costing, their figuring out what they could afford to build in the way of a building was immediately influenced by a geotechnical phenomenon that raised the cost of doing business by hundreds of thousands of dollars, placing it beyond the availability of the developer to do the project. At that point, they came to us and we talked about it. We identified that this would be an area that we thought would qualify. The firm went out and said, we think the conditions would be there if you do a study. We think it's surfacially obvious that it's the case, and the project was undertaken to create this study. In the event you agree with the planning department and with the planning firm that these conditions are present and give us a positive recommendation, we then go to the city council and do the same thing, and giving notice to surrounding landowners and political subdivisions alike that this is on its way. That'll be followed by a plan for the area, and that will describe the kinds of development that we'd like to see in the area. And then lastly, should the developer and the city go forward with their intended plans at the moment, there would be a redevelopment agreement and ultimately a project in this area to create infill residential use on this location. Using existing resources, we don't have to build new roads, for example. We already have the roads. We don't have to lay down new electrical lines. They exist. In other words, we get more bang for our buck out of the existing infrastructure than if this building was to be built, let's say, at the edge of the city, in which the public cost would be considerably greater. It's one of the reasons our comp plan says it's good to build where we already exist and can maximize the use of our infrastructure. The intended ultimate project which we would describe in the plan phase the next time we see you in the event we get a chance to go forward. We'll detail that. This question today is whether or not you agree that the statutory conditions exist, whether the planning firm's report is sufficient to give you a credible basis upon making that decision, and then permission for us to go to the city council and take on the case there to make the same argument that we're making today.
General questions for David?
Yes. This is my first opportunity to deal with this issue here, and so I probably will ask questions that other people have the answers to on the board, on the commission, but I'm going to ask anyway. First, is the developer a property owner in the area?
Yes.
So that's helpful to know.
If you were to look at this area, the area that we identify now as being subject to redevelopment, it's this building.
Okay. But it affects the whole area.
It does.
So I guess I'm curious about whether or not all the property owners or business owners have been notified. In the notification labels, I didn't see their names. I saw neighborhood associations. So that was a curiosity of mine. And hearing you explain the process that you'll go to city council and then you'll go to the other property owners, at least gives me.
Actually, the developer will tell you, and if you'd like to ask the developer, because they're present, they have in fact reached out to the affected property holders in the area and have told them what their intentions are and compared notes, and we know of no objection in the area of the other affected parcels. There are 6 privately owned parcels and 2 public parcels, and those are owned by LES.
I had one other question. If the desire is to put in development in this area, and you think that it's a good idea because you've got a lot of infrastructure already in place, you've started by telling us that there's defective street layouts, and yet there won't need to be any additional.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I could have easily been confusing there, and if I was, I regret that. What I was talking about was water and sewer mains that exist that are older. On occasion, when you build a building, you will sometimes go down to and replace the sewer lines and the water lines with new infrastructure, the cost of which would be a TIFable expense. And the TIFable expense would be paid for by the future taxes that this property holder would pay in the coming years, and that would support the creation of new water and sewer mains. Now, what I can't tell you is if there is a plan for those in place. That's a question that comes at the point in which the specific project is brought to us, and we identify what is to be done and what would we use TIF dollars for, and what would be private expenses. But I can tell you that there are conditions under which we would say, that's really worth looking at. And a 60-year-old water main, if we can make it better than that, we'd love to see that kind of thing be done in a project. And one of the reasons is it affects not only that property holder, but it affects every other person who is fed or supported by that water main. The quality of their service and its likelihood of being broken down or interrupted goes down if you can upgrade the infrastructure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Let me just clarify that David is not only giving the staff presentation, but you are also the applicant too, so.
We are the applicant in
That's
this
why
case.
questions are-
Normally, there's a planning department, but this is a thing that, through confabulation between the two of us, we trust their report has been viewed. I know how important it is for you, and they ask me to bear the burden of your cross-examination.
Very good. If there are no other questions, do you have a question?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
If there are no other questions, then we will take testimony in support of the application. Is there any testimony in opposition of the application? Are there any other questions for David at this point? Okay. So there will be no applicant rebuttal because David's the applicant. So we are ready to entertain a motion.
So moved. Finnegan.
Second, Harris.
Discussion.
Well, I'm certainly comforted by knowing that there's no objections from the local landowners, right, that are directly affected. That's my biggest concern.
Anything else?
I'd like to add that I learned a new word today, tiffable. Apparently, it's an adjective now.
Confabulation.
Very good. Well, I'm going to support the motion. I think it's a good first step for this property and will serve our city really well. So would you call the roll?
Yes. Beckius?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Okay, as Commissioner Shear has declared a conflict of interest on the remaining 2 applications for that are scheduled for public hearing and action on today's agenda, he is excusing himself and has appointed Commissioner Harris to serve as chair. I'll go ahead and read the next item, which is under public hearing, is item 5.1A, Comprehensive Plan Conformance number 16012, to review as to conformance with the 2040 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, a proposed amendment to the Antelope Valley redevelopment plan, and add the Telegraph District Phase 2, Telegraph Flats, and Telegraph Lofts East redevelopment project. The proposed project area is approximately 4 acres and is generally located between L Street and the north alley of N Street and South 20th Street to the Antelope Valley Channel. The Antelope Valley redevelopment plan area consists of approximately 900 acres with 4 broad districts or groups of uses, including Antelope Creek neighborhoods, downtown Lincoln, and the University of Nebraska City campus. Staff recommendation is conformance with the comprehensive plan, and the associated item is item 5.1B, which is change of zone number 16045, Telegraph District B4 planned unit development for a change of zone from B4 business district to B4 business district planned unit development on property generally bounded by O Street on the north, Antelope Creek on the east, K Street on the south, and Antelope Valley Parkway on the west, and generally located at 401 South 21st Street. The application is for a planned unit development district designation of said property and for the approval of a development plan which proposes modifications to the zoning ordinance, land subdivision ordinance, and design standards to foster an urban mixed-use area at the southeast corner of downtown, including office, residential, retail, and other commercial activities in a vibrant and distinctive neighborhood reflecting its historic utility and industrial roots combined with an innovative high-tech vibe. Staff recommendation is for conditional approval. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these applications?
Seeing none. Applicant?
Thank you. Wow. My name is Wynn Yermstead. I'm the Community Development Manager with the city's Urban Development Department. The 2 items, I'm going to talk about the redevelopment plan, and then Kent Seacrest is here representing the developers, and he will talk about the PUD. By way of introduction, a little bit about this process, the blight study that Dave talked about for Cotner is the first step in a 3-step redevelopment process that gets us to TIF, tax increment financing, and those TIFable items that Dave talked about. What we're here doing now with the Telegraph District in Antelope Valley represents the second phase in the redevelopment process, which is the plan. We already have a redevelopment plan for the Antelope Valley area. This is amending it to add another project to it. We already have the Telegraph District identified in the redevelopment plan, so this is before you today is amending the plan to include the second phase of the Telegraph District, which, to orient you here a little bit, this is L Street down here, N Street, 21st Street, and O Street is just off the map. Some of you will recall the first phase of the Telegraph District included the 401 building down here and the parking garage here. This is the old AT&T warehouse, which is, as you may have seen, has had a lot of work done to it. That's not currently included it's in the Telegraph District. It's not in the plan amendment, either the first or the second phase of Telegraph District, because there were tenants that wanted to get in that building and the developers just couldn't wait. So that's not included at this time. So what's included in phase 2 within this area, this is the former Fisher Foods complex that I'll be talking about in a minute. And then this is a location of another new building that will go in on the corner of 21st and N. And then there's streetscape involved throughout that we'll talk about a little bit. That will not only connect those projects, but will also incorporate or tie into the first phase of the Telegraph District. So phase 2. First, I'll talk a little bit about Telegraph Flats. And this is the former Fisher Foods complex. And these 2 buildings are there today. And I think when Kent gets up, he might have some pictures of what they actually look like today. They're rough. They're in really rough shape. This building we refer to as the Dairy Building. This was the Towel Building. These are names that were affiliated with the old Fisher Foods. The Power Plant Building right here is also part of the project. And this represents a new addition onto the Dairy Building. There is part of the building is here, but it's in really bad shape and just couldn't be saved. And so that piece of it will be demolished and a new addition will come into here. So first of all, talking about the Towel Building, which is this building right here, that's going to be renovated to include first floor retail and just about four or five residential units on the backside. Then the brick dairy building will be renovated and expanded into about 57 residential units with first floor retail. And I mentioned the southern section will have a new addition onto it back in here. The power plant building here will be renovated to include indoor and outdoor amenity space for the tenants that will occupy these two buildings. Parking, there's parking available on this side of the building. There's a parking lot across the street that's also included in the redevelopment area that will provide parking. And then there's on-street parking as well. I should note that this whole area is Zone B4, which is the downtown zoning district, so there are no parking requirements. But obviously the developers want parking, so they will be providing this additional parking. 20th Street here will undergo some changes. The Telegraph District is really intended to be a vibrant, mixed-use active area, but 20th Street will be a little bit different. That's going to be more residential in character. There'll be some curbs moved so that there can be more landscaping included here. There's little balconies on the residential units, and there's steps into the various entrances. Coming before you too will be a street vacation request to vacate 4 feet of 20th Street, and that's to allow for the steps. And those, just another additional fact, those steps will be built to be removable. There's a pretty significant sewer under here, and if the sewer would ever need to be accessed, then the stairs can actually be removed from the front of the building, so to get access to that. So that's it for Fisher Foods, the Fisher Food Complex. The other project is what developers are calling Telegraph Lofts East, and here's 21st Street and here's N Street. At some point in the future, there may be a companion building that goes across the street. That's currently where the Randolph Car Wash is located, if you're familiar with that. So this building will be a 3-story, right now it's planned to be 3-story building with retail ground floor and housing above, some housing on the first floor. This is just kind of showing the context of the whole area. So here's N Street here, and this is 21st Street. This is the building that we're talking about in the project right now. This is the potential companion building for a future phase. But I like this photo because you can also see some of the streetscape that's being planned, the parking, additional parking, diagonal parking that will be in place. The N Street protected bike lane runs right in front here. There will be a few modifications made to that so that the parking can be included in that. So we're looking at about a little over 20,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space, as well as live, work, loft, and multifamily housing, all on the first floor, and then about 46 residential units on the upper floors. 21st Street along here, and you can see better in this photo, or rendering. This is 21st Street here, and there will be a dock built in here. Not a big one, not like what you see in the Haymarket on 8th Street, but a smaller dock that will provide pedestrian spaces in there. So parking in this project, there'll be 65 underground stalls underneath the building and about 200 parking stalls behind the building, which you can see better here. So here's the building, and then here's additional parking back behind here. So connecting these two projects, as well as some of the first phase, is streetscape. And this is a little wonky, I guess, to look at. But so O Street up here, the blue streets show where the streetscape will be for this project. And by streetscape, we're talking about replacing sidewalks, adding additional on-street parking, street lighting, pedestrian lighting, planters and planting areas, district identification signs and logos, as well as banners and bioswales and some other stormwater improvements. That's all in the right-of-way. So that covers the three main aspects of the project, the Fisher Foods, the new building at 21st and N, and the streetscape. A couple other items that are included in the plan. If you look at the plan area, the existing Muni building is included there. We're not looking at doing anything with that in phase 2 right now, but the Parks Department, which has their planning and construction office and also their youth athletics, I think, is in there. They're moving as of April 1st into the health department as part of the whole Parks Department relocation. And so they'll be vacating that building. It's a city-owned building, and we're talking about what's going to happen there. But we thought we would include it. In fact, that's why this got delayed 2 weeks, as we thought it would make sense to include it it could create some opportunities in the future to have it included. But nothing is planned for it at this point. The other thing I wanted to point out was there's a LES substation right in the area, right across the street. So here's Fisher Foods. This piece right here is an LES substation. And what we're looking at doing there, and that is part of phase 2, and what we're looking at doing there is doing what we're calling an enhanced screen wall to provide screening of that. And also we're talking with the owner of Constellation Studios, which is up here on the corner. You may be familiar with the mural that's on there, looking at potentially expanding that and having that on some of the LES walls. So we think, LES thinks their substations are really pretty now, but we think it'll be better when we get done with it. So. Lastly, just a couple other things to note. The project did go to the Urban Design Committee in January. It received a positive review and was approved. The developers did have a neighborhood meeting in January, attended by about 30 people, I think, 30 or so folks, supportive of the project. They have also had one-on-one meetings with some of the stakeholders and property owners in the area. This phase is very consistent with the comprehensive plan, the downtown master plan, and other elements of the Antelope Valley redevelopment plan. Private investment, we're looking at over $22 million, which will generate about $2.8 million in TIF. Those TIF uses are still being negotiated, but will likely include site acquisition, site preparation, and some of the streetscape work. As far as timing, this plan amendment will move forward to City Council for a public hearing on February 13th. Following that, we're hoping sometime in March, the redevelopment agreement will be done, and that's the document that actually identifies specific uses of TIF and gets into more details on the construction of the project, what's included, and so forth. So I guess in conclusion, we think this is really an amazing project. It is creating, and as Kent will talk about when he talks about some of the elements of the PUD, it really is creating a sense of place in this part of downtown. And it's really doing exactly what we hoped the Antelope Valley project would do in creating the infrastructure and laying the groundwork for this type of redevelopment to happen. Getting rid of that floodplain is what is making this Antelope Valley project work. So, and it's infill residential. It gives more housing choices for downtown or people that want to live near downtown, which is very much in keeping with the comprehensive plan as well. So, with that, I can take any questions you may have, or if you want to hear Kent talk about the PUD and maybe fill in some more of the details, then we can do questions after.
Questions? Doesn't look like it. Ken?
I tried to cover everything I thought you'd ask. So.
Wind makes my job easier, and I appreciate that. Good afternoon. My name's Kent Seacrest, representing what we call EDO, which is a partnership arrangement between Nelnet and Speedway Motors here in Lincoln. And we're proud to present Lincoln's newest neighborhood. This has been an industrial area, and we're transforming it, to say the least. Craig Smith, Adam Criswell, and Tim Gergen are here to answer questions that you might have. And I just want to fly you through a PowerPoint, and I might take a couple extra minutes if you will bear with me, but I think the images explain both the redevelopment efforts as well as this plan unit development that's in front of you. As Wynn said, it started with flooding in the Antelope Valley area, and this is K Street. that some of you drive maybe on a daily basis. This was about a 7-block wide dear old floodplain, and you can see the purple area is the PUD area that we're talking about today. So the bulk of the area was in the Antelope Valley, and with the stormwater improvements, we were able to remove that floodplain, and now we can redevelop the area. These are just old images where we had traditional downtown. The Antelope Valley Creek we put back in. That was part of the flood solution that we could carry the 100-year waters. And you'll see that we are now talking about this edge of the Antelope Valley area. But it really starts up north. We're going to follow the creek bank, particularly the west. Assurity started the efforts, followed by Union Plaza, and we're now the neighbor to the south. And this area, you can maybe see, is actually physically bigger than the West Haymarket area. It won't be as intense or with density, but it is actually a bigger area that we're forming a new neighborhood in. We have done over 120, 30 pages of master planning, and so we've laid out a lot of the vision, not only for the building, but the urban spaces between the building and the landscaping. As Wynn mentioned, we have been working on and started construction of the phase 1, which are the 2 first Nelnet and telephone buildings here that you can see through a windshield as you're going to be driving up here. This is the first building in phase 1, and it will flip and have a new facade in the near future. This is the building that's been busily under construction for a new Nelnet office, and it will have windows. If you drive by, you will start to see those windows in the future. Phase 2 is really the main 2 buildings, the areas that Wynn mentioned, but we kind of also start talking about the warehouse building, which is the south building here. It's been rehabbed. We'll probably do more rehab down the road, but we wanted to jumpstart that building. Wynn mentioned that the former Fisher Food buildings are not very attractive. Well, these are the buildings as they stand today, and we will be transforming them into those images that Wynn had showed you before. This is a urban mixed-use neighborhood. And there's the picture of the dairy building with the new building wing on the back of it on the west side. This is what we call telegraph lofts, which Wynn showed you those images. That's what it would look like at night. And you're going to start to see those telegraph logos quite a bit as part of the PUD process. This is the telegraph showing you that famous iconic billboard will be transformed and be an identification for the new neighborhood in the years to come. We're talking 12 block faces of streetscape just in this phase alone. So this is probably Lincoln's biggest, maybe original 13th Street along downtown was bigger, but this is big amount of urban form changes that we will be doing on the street front. This just, again, is one of those street views for you to see. I want to talk now about the plan unit development. This is an overlay zone where it will still be zone B4, but we are putting some extra restrictions or abilities on top of the present B4. This is a big geographical area. This is the outline of the B4 area that has been advertised. And a lot of it has to do with logos, images, signage, creating that sense of place that Wynn mentioned. You will see a lot of Telegraph District logos. We want to create that sense of place. So not only will the buildings have very iconic features, but so will the identification marks that you see throughout the district. You will know you're in a special place. We are also adding a new type of signage. So much of signage has been dealing with cars. These are new signs that are going to be dealing with pedestrians. So pedestrians will be able to clearly see where they are coming and going to throughout the district. We are using streetscape markers. These are taller features that we want to do along with banners that will identify these are the special corner placements of the district that you will see. We also have what I call the larger, what we call identification signs. Those are the ones that have the electronic messaging board. We propose to have 2, and then we're doing these freestanding gateway features, which will across the street. They will not have electronic signs, but they'll be on M Street in the 2 areas. If your eyes are good, the 2 Fs are the ones going across the street without the electronics, and the two E's, blue E's, are the ones that will have the electronic signs with them. And those are, you know, time, temperature, festival events in the district, as well as allowing businesses to advertise. So not everybody feels the need to get their own electronic sign. We're trying to minimize that type of messaging. Again, we mentioned the iconic billboard that would be transformed into a telegraph district identification. And it's important because some of the things we're doing in this PUD is we're restricting signs. We do not favor, and so this would prohibit these type of mobile signs, would not be allowed in the PUD. What I call rotating signs would not be allowed in the PUD. What I call internal illuminated translucent awnings would not be allowed in the PUD. And predominantly acrylic or translucent face signs would not be allowed in the PUD. They're great in some places, but we don't think, this is our sense of a translucent face sign. So it's made out of the same material, but it's minimized. Those we like, the others we think are not appropriate in the type of sense of place we're trying to create. Some other things the PUD is doing is we're toughening up, or making it easier, I should say, brightening up the pedestrian portion of the walkway so that you can see better, because we think eyes on the street that can see will be happier and will create a safer environment. We are taking the downtown design standards and in some cases making them more restrictive. We are saying any major remodeling or new construction will go through Urban Design Committee. That's tougher than the present standard is. We think Urban Design Committee will help us identify because what it should look like in the future. New structures can be built within 13 feet. What that means is you're not going to see parking out front of the building, but you might see pedestrian areas in front of these buildings. And again, the first 20 feet the first 20 feet of buildings can be durable materials. In our case, they're brick, because we think that's the predominant feature and will create a sense of specialness. We also have requirements articulating the long faces with windows, entrances, variations, so that you don't see those long flat walls that are not very exciting along the way. That, in a nutshell, is both some more images of the plan amendment as well as a description of the PUD that we have in front of you today. And with that, both Wynn and I would be glad to take questions.
Questions? Go ahead, Dee.
Once you go through city council and get approval, what's your timeline? Do you know?
Well, phase one's under construction. Phase two, you would see construction. We've done some demolition to get ready, but you will see a spring, summer time period creating these buildings. And we say phase two, stay tuned. There's going to be phase threes and fours too. But we need to first absorb the other phases before we open those others up.
Thank you.
Just one question with regards to the text amendment. So the text amendment 16017 that we recommended approval, I think it goes to the city council next week or Monday. Does this hinge upon the council approving that text amendment with respect to the parking, or if for some reason it didn't pass, would you just ask for to do away with the parking requirement and proceed?
We would do the latter. We expect the downtown before text amendments that the planning department has shepherded to date, that they will cross the finish line, but in the rare event they don't, we will ask for that no parking requirement. Now, we are going to provide parking, but not every property should have parking. They should be more clustered, centralized, and of course we also think we can create more incentives through the bus transportation system and pedestrians and the bike trails, that it's not always a car environment we're creating here.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think we're done.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else wanting to testify in support of either of these items? Is there anyone here wanting to testify in opposition to either of these items? Do we have questions for staff? Applicant rebuttal? Nope. All right. There are
I'll
no
need to-
questions?
I'll need to call these separately.
Okay.
You ready to vote?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, this would be for action on comprehensive conformance number 16012. Staff recommendation is for conformance with the comprehensive plan.
So moved. Finnegan.
Second, Washington.
Any discussion? I just say it's really nice to see private investment of this caliber following the not insignificant public investment in Alla Valley, and it's really nice to see this all coming together and hopefully turning into something that will sort of serve as a role model for other communities. I intend to support this item.
I'm the dinosaur in the group, and you know, I remember 100 years ago when Antelope Valley project started, and I am so excited to see what's happening now, and I am delighted with this project, so way to go.
Call the roll, please.
Okay. Beckius?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Next item for action is changes zone number 16045. Staff recommendation is for conditional approval.
I have a motion.
So moved, Washington.
Second, Beckius.
Discussion? Again, sort of echoing what's already been said, there was something that stood out to me when I read the little blurb that on the agenda there was always a little blurb that kind of talks about the project, and when I think you referred to it as well, or maybe it was you, Jerry, when you read the agenda item, but it talks about this combining a historic utility and industrial roots with innovative high-tech, with an innovative high-tech vibe. And I think that's, it would be really cool if that could kind of be the slogan for Lincoln downtown development. So whoever wrote that, good job. All right, call the roll.
Okay, Beckius?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none, we're adjourned.